Good day, everyone. So before I launch into my topic for the day, I'm going to have to ask for your patience a little bit because this is day 2 of a 3-day fast that I am engaged in. I'm doing sort of a little solo fast and meditation retreat for myself. And I haven't eaten since yesterday, and I've tried to make the video already several times, and I noticed that my mind is just not working as well as it normally does, just because I'm low on calories. And so I think I can get through this okay, but if I stumble and if things don't make sense a little bit, that's why. Okay. So now that I said that, I can just launch into it, I think. Okay, so the topic for the day, I want to attempt to respond to a question that was raised in response to my previous video, which I made a couple of days ago, it was called The Other Pandemic, Conditioned Mind on the Level of Society. The point I was attempting to make there was that from my point of view, the way our society is structured and the way that we interact with each other communally, and globally, those same structures that are there in our society are the ones that are in each individual conditioned mind. So in other words, the external is a mirror of the internal. And I went through a bunch of examples of that. And the conclusion that I reached was that what we need to do in order to get past the unfairness, injustice, environmental degradation that we are on the brink of, all of that, violence, what we need to do in order to get past that as a human family is the same thing we need to do as individuals. It's the same work, we just need to do it globally instead of in addition to individually. So that was the basic premise of the video. The question that I got, and I really enjoy getting comments and questions and objections and that kind of thing, by the way. It helps me to look more deeply into things and also helps me to know what would be interesting to people. So the question, as I understand it, was basically, yeah, get that. I get it, how we're doing all these conditioned processes and how we're interacting with each other in these unconscious ways. But what do we do? What do we do about that? The person was saying that he looks at what's happening in our global conversation and our society, our cultural conversation, and sees people lying to each other, lying to themselves and lying to each other. And that is what I see too. I mean, as conditioned beings, we're really good at lying to ourselves because, for lots of reasons, but the primary one I think is because we're selfish and self-centered, and our lives are oriented around getting what we believe that we want, which is, for most people, the same as what ego wants. And so we're really good at lying to ourselves in order to justify getting what we want. That is the foundation, I think, of all of our problems. And so he was saying that he sees it happening everywhere, and so he's attempting to not lie to himself and not lie to others. And he's attempting to kind of join together with other people who also are attempting to try to not lie to themselves and lie to others. And so that was part of what he said. And then, this question he was asking, it feels like we need to, it's great to see all this process stuff, but we also have we need to move to a place where we can see what to do to actually solve these problems. And, do I agree with that? And is that actually a thing? Or to ask that kind of question, or is that even that unhelpful? So several things came up to me in response. The first is that there is such a thing as clarity. And there is such a thing, to me, of sort of a way, the word I tend to use for this is correct, like a correct way to go, but it doesn't really not a good word, because what I'm attempting to do when I use the word correct is avoid right and wrong speech. I made another video a few times ago about how there is no right and wrong, about how those are just concepts that we make up basically in order to control ourselves and others and cause ourselves to suffer. To live in a world of right and wrong and try to act from being right and avoid being wrong is not a good way to go. I think we just end up causing the same patterns of behavior to happen over and over and over again, which are inherently dysfunctional, not to mention hurtful, violent, unjust, and all those things. So the only word I can think of, and it's hard to think of, have words to use for these kinds of things because our language is inherently dualistic, so no word is going to work really. But I tend to use the word correct in order to just make it different from right. Okay, but what I mean when I say that is that life is moving in certain directions. There are ways through that are skillful, that work in any situation, and that's what I'm really pointing at. And we have, everybody has that experience. So think of a time when you're up against some kind of situation where you're just stuck, and you couldn't see what to do, and there just didn't seem like there was a good way to go. And then there was a little shift in perspective. You just identified. You stepped back to a bigger place, and you saw, oh, there's a way. There's a way to go through that works, that takes care of everything, that works for everybody. And that kind of solution is available, from everything that I can see, in every circumstance in life. There's always a way through that works. There's always, to say it in kind of more religious sort of way, there's always a way that life is moving, and we can get on board with that if we can see it, if we can be present enough to see it. We can get on board with that and go where life is going, and that's how things work. That's how everybody gets their needs met, in a way that works. In order to get there, we have to let go of all the stuff I was talking about in the previous video. All of the conditioned mind chatter and the assumptions and the selfishness that are part of conditioned mind. If we can let go of that, then we can see where life is going, and we can go where life is going. So to say it another way, it's not that that's the right answer. That's just where life is going. And it's not even necessarily the case that there's only one way that life is going. There might be multiple ways through that work, but we have to be present enough to see it. Okay? So that's important to acknowledge, I think, because if we don't have that, otherwise there is nothing that we can do. All we can do is just look at how dysfunctional we are and see the causes of it in conditioned mind. But then be stuck because we have no place to act from. There is a place to act from. There's an inherent clarity that we all possess that most of us are not in touch with most of the time. But one thing that spiritual practice offers is a way to get in touch with that. And the way to get in the moment and see where life is going and go there. And we can do that as individuals, and we can do that as a species. That to me is what's so exciting about the potential that's here. That we could actually do that as a species, where we could get together, get to center together, and have cultural, group, global insights about what needs to happen, where we need to go. As I saw it said in the last video, that's not going to happen anytime soon, and probably won't happen, for many, many generations. It's going to take a lot of work to get there, just like it does for an individual. It takes a lot of work to get to the place where you can be living from that place. But it can absolutely happen. I have that direct experience myself. And not always, I'm working on it like everybody else is, but I have that clear experience in myself that I can live from that place where life is just unfolding and I'm just participating in life unfolding. And we can do the same as a global community. Okay? So there's a clear way to go. Okay? All right, and then in terms of joining together with other people who are also doing practice and attempting to live from a clear place instead of just following their conditioning around and doing what their conditioning says to do, yeah, of course, that's a great thing to do, I think. That's definitely what we all need to do. And hopefully over time, as the generations pass, more and more people will realize this, that there is this other place to live from, and the critical mass will move more and more from where it is now, it seems to me, just kind of mass unconsciousness, mass selfishness, to a place of, mass consciousness, mass work towards enlightenment, towards clarity, and a mass willingness to do what's best for all instead of just, getting what I want for me. Okay, so what does that look like practically speaking? Because I feel like that was a part of what the question was asking. So when I look at it, I see two different levels of problems that we have. We have process level problems and we have content level problems. So on the process level, the fundamental problem, as I've said, is selfishness and self-centeredness. We are identified with conditioned mind and ego, which is inherently selfish. Okay? Some other kinds of problems are we tend to be looking outward instead of being looking inward. We think that individually and culturally, that our problems are being caused by outside things. Well, it's the Republicans. That's the problem. It's the Democrats. They're the ones who are causing the problems, stuff like that. instead of looking inward and seeing how we are creating problems that need to be solved, and the work that we need to do to get to this place of clarity that I'm talking about. Lots of other things along those lines we could point to as sort of process level, problems that we have. Another one I can think of, we tend to be victims. We tend to make ourselves victims of things, stuff like that. So on a process level, the solution is to do practice. We all have to get to a place of center instead of being in conditioned mind, as I've been saying. And if we solve the process level problems, that is going to take care of almost all of our content level problems, because almost all of our content level problems are being caused by process level, trouble. Okay? So on content level problems, it seems to me like the solutions are essentially already there for a lot of things. And if they aren't, if we were able to cooperate, it would be very easy to come up with content level solutions. We're really smart, despite what I said in the other video about how primitive we actually are. We're actually very smart, and we're good at solving problems. The reason we have trouble solving problems is because we are in conditioned mind, and we're opposing each other, and we're scapegoating each other, and we're making victims out of ourselves, and all these things. And also, deep down, we don't want solutions to problems that are going to cause us or ask us to let go of what we want. We might say that we are, but we if we're in conditioning, we don't. We're clinging to getting what we want above all other things, and so we don't really want solutions. So, if we can undo all of that, seems to me the content level problem will probably be pretty easy to solve. So, for example, and I feel like I'm going to get in hot water for saying this, but I'm going to risk it. So, to me, when I look at our content level problems, possibly the biggest one, seems to me, is there's just way too many of us. There's way too many human beings on this earth, okay? And then all the obvious implications on that. The huge impact that has on the planet, all that. I'm sure I don't need to explain that. Well, that's a very easy problem to solve. We could solve that in 2 or 3 generations, very easily if we decided we wanted to, because, obviously the way to solve that problem is to have less babies for a period of time, to get the population down to one that actually works in our ecological environment. Why don't we do that? Well, because, people, this is where I'm afraid I'm getting in trouble, people are selfish. They say, I want kids. It doesn't matter what impact that has. It doesn't matter that we have way too many people already. That's what I want. And so, to make that change and solve that problem would require sacrifice on the part of a lot of people. Although, this is kind of an aside, but I bet you that if the people who really feel called to have children, and there are people like that who really, that's just what they're on this earth to do. I know some people like that. If those people had children, and the people who don't really feel called to have children didn't, then it probably would just work out naturally. When I say the people who don't feel called, it seems to me a lot of people have kids, not because they really feel called to, but because that's just what you do. That's what you should do. Or I don't want to disappoint my parents who want to have grandchildren. Or, and this is the craziest one of all, it's going to make my life meaningful and give me some purpose. Like that is just a frightening, just crazy reason to have children. To bring this human into existence that is going to largely suffer through life and then consume all these resources. Ooh, that just seems rough. But there are people who are legitimately called to bring children to this earth. If they were able to do it, and the rest of us who don't feel called to, could let go of the whatever conditioned sort of should, or whatever sort of ego-driven, selfish motivation there was to have children, probably would solve itself. But anyway, I don't actually know that's the case. But anyway, that problem would be super easy to solve. Okay, here's another one. Environmental devastation that we are causing. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from, and I get it that I am on thin ice here because I'm about to talk about economy, and I'm not an economist, and a very primitive understanding of it, actually. So, yeah. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. The process stuff that I'm saying here, I feel really confident in. The details might be shaky. So why are we destroying the environment? Well, it's because we have an economic system that is based on greed and self-centeredness. And that is also, and this is the part where it gets really shaky, it's based on usury. It's based on the desire that we have and the structures that we have economically that say that if you have money, it needs to make money. And that's why our economy, it needs to grow. You know how economists are talking about, if you have 3% growth, you're doing great. If you only have 0.5% of growth, it's terrible. It's a horrible thing happening. Well, why do we need growth? It's because if you have money, it's supposed to make money. People want to continue to make more money. They want to get more and more wealthy. And so that drives this need for our economy to grow. If our economy grows, we need more people. So we're not going to want to have less people. And people who will consume, who will buy things that we're selling so that we can make more money. And then we can have more money that will then make more money. So we need, sorry, I lost it for a second. So we have, the economy is driven by this desire that we have to make money and and then there's usury. And so I was explaining why. So that leads to the need for us to have money and then make more money causes us to need to have more people who consume and then also have more resources to consume because that's basically where our money comes from. It's resources. And so we need to continue to devastate the planet in order to get more and more stuff. Okay, so we can get richer and richer and feed our ego appetites. So if that sounds incredibly cynical, it probably is, but it seems, from what I understand about the way it works, and again, I only understand so much, that seems pretty factual. Okay, well, can we solve that problem? I think we can. If you want to read an interesting book on the topic, I won't try to explain the arguments in it because I'm not qualified, but it's this book called Sacred Economics by this guy named Charles Eisenstein. And it outlines a different way that we could do economy. And it has stuff in it like, instead of money, making money, we could set it up so that if you have money and you're hoarding money, money gradually deteriorates in value over time. So there's an incentive to keep the money moving, stuff like that. And lots of other arguments that he makes. But, and he is sort of putting forth a possible model for an economic system that would incentivize us to take care of the environment instead of destroy the environment and take care of each other instead of subjecting each other to all kinds of humiliations and punishments and injustice and stuff. So it seems to me, I think the solution is there, but we have to address these things on on a process level to end the conditioning that's there. So again, I don't know what all the concrete solutions are. I mean, there's other stuff like we need to get clean water to everybody on the planet. If we were not self-centered and driven by our own profit and our own desire for wealth and to have what we want, and we were willing, and this is the key thing, and it's a big if we were willing to live and to act for what's the best for everyone, not just what is the best for me and what I want, could we solve this problem? I feel very confident that we could. We're very good at figuring out ways to deal with situations. So maybe, with the population thing. So people stop having babies, as many babies, to bring down the population. Well, that's going to cause some consequences. For example, there's a lot of places in the world where older people rely on the younger people to take care of them. We'd have to solve that problem. We'd have to figure out how to take care of the older people with less younger people. But I feel, as an example, I feel confident that we could do that. Again, if we were not in conditioned mind and we were able to actually cooperate instead of compete and make each other wrong and that sort of thing. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. To the person who submitted the question, thank you. And if I've missed the point, let me know. Take care, be well. I hope you have a really good day. I hope you have a really good practice day. And I'll see you again soon.